Some of my implication questions kind of already got talked about, but that's all right. So starting back with the first article, the Goldstein Teachers Board's article, it starts with talking about COP's plan to get more highly educated people into the classroom, even if only for a few years, to show that teaching should be respected. But a big criticism of that is that it would paint teaching as just kind of a pit stop on the way to a real job. So have y'all seen this mentality still reflected today, and is teaching still unrespected as a career today? And does anyone have any experience or examples that they've seen?
Well, when I was in the recruiting process for volleyball, I forget what school I was talking to, but I remember vividly, I was at my grandma's house and I was on a recruiting call, and he's like, oh, what do you want to do? Like, my grandma was like, oh, I want to be a teacher. My sister pushed me, like, you want to be a teacher? Why? They make no money. I know that. Like, that's not anything else. That's not what I'm thinking about. Yeah. It's my experience.
You know, one of my job shadowing there was a period, planning period, we didn't really have anything going on, so we were just talking. And he probably spent at least like 20 minutes telling me like we're not going to get paid anything. It's like not as rewarding as they make it out to be. And make it seem great. But I mean, I'm sure, it's just like his personal experience. So he was telling me though how like North Carolina, how they like the funding has been going down over the years. It's not like accounting for inflation and stuff, so, like salaries. That's one of my personal experiences. Not to be a negative Nancy or anything.
That's teachers' favorite thing to bitch about, isn't it? Like, that's one of those black holes, problem worship situations you're gonna find yourself in. Where it's like, okay, well, let's have a solution. Let's not just over and over again for 50 years talk about how bad teachers are paid.
It's kind of suit them,
How do we change it?
It's community builder.
What?
It's community builder in a sense. Rite of passage.
It is a rite of passage, but it can also be demoralizing and burn you out. It's one of those boundaries you're gonna have to figure out for yourself. Parts of it versus the burnout.
Rare question. The thought that teachers are just considered glorified babysitters that get overpaid and moan quite often too much for a lot of people, and the fact that there's a push for non-qualified teachers who have not gone through the program like we're going through now, or just having a degree in general. The fact that if you have any bachelor's degree in my county, anyway, my district, you can teach at that school. Quite literally, does not matter. Yeah, that was the one. I think that's the one for me.
What the other thing is that I have a friend from home who hasn't gone through college or anything, and he got hired at a charter school, and he gets his own classroom and students. He's teaching at like the elementary level, and he didn't have to go through any school. And when he told me that, I wanted to be happy for him. I did. But I was not happy for him at all. I was actually quite frankly pissed off.
I'm probably worried for the students.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's that part of it, but there's also like, that's not fair. That's just not fair.
You don't have one college credit.
Yeah, you don't have one college credit and you are in a classroom with no supervision, no stations.
I felt that way about the Teach for America teachers because they were very prominent in the charter schools in Los Angeles. And when I got on my teacher credential, there was a hiring freeze in all the districts except for at the charter schools. And they were staffing all the charter schools with Teach for America teachers. And it was like, you have all these, like everybody in my cohort couldn't get jobs. We couldn't even get substitute teaching work. And these Teach for America students were in there just because they went to an Ivy, got into teaching jobs that all of us were qualified and trained to do and had done in student teaching.
There's a silver lining. You went to graduate school.
It's true. And I get to be here with you all today. But that's one of the things that pissed me off about schools.
There's also like that feeds into the narrative of teaching not being professionalized and people not taking it seriously because it's like, oh, we'll just throw this person in here because this job isn't that serious, right? Like, and I just think that that's where a lot of the corruption is, a lot of like the, what are we gonna do about the pay? What are we gonna do about how teachers are treated? That's like, I can't figure that out when I'm trying to teach a class of however many students, and then I have another class, and then, like, it's just not something.
Something I always heard people say was like those who can't teach, basically saying people who like don't make it in their field just go back to being teachers, and I always thought that was a really crazy thing to say.
Those who can do, those who can't teach.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because there's a lot of, professors who started out as teachers and went on to do the harder job because they were so frustrated by the school system.
Oh yeah, new information that I forgot to be mad about. State of Texas. Chaplains or just spiritual leaders can become teachers without board certification or any college credits. If you didn't know that, I think it's also a law in Florida as well. So if you ever want to be religious and become a pastor and become a teacher, that might be a little bit easier. Maybe. That requires becoming a pastor though, so.
I mean, there's websites for that. You just sign up, pay $20 to be a certificate.
I'm literally ordained, I didn't even pay the $20.
How does that happen? Like, what's that process? Like, it literally just like.
There's a process. Oh, you're
Just
passing
one
your
up full
year.
legal.
Just talk with your district's freaking school board. That's it. It's in Texas. That you thinking about? Crazy part. Hey, still better pay than here.
That poses an interesting question. How would the state of Texas feel about the Lulu teaching?
Hey, don't forget the demonic temple. Can't forget about it. Always.
The flying spaghetti monster.
Always.
The Pastafarians.
I love those guys.
They have good off flavor.
I can imagine that there are probably some unwritten rules to that, which is that most principals wouldn't hire somebody from a Pastafarian religious group.
Sorry, we don't take applicants for dark gods.
I think because it's a chaplain, it's simulating a very specific situation.
Yeah.
All right, I feel happier now. What's your next questions?
I guess we can go back to yours.
So
We got about 6 more minutes.
continuing on with like how the public sees teachers, do you think factors of race, gender, and class affect how the public sees a teacher? Do they praise and respect certain groups more than others? And does anyone have any examples of things they've seen in their experience?
Friends of mine, black, of course, going to their internships. They're soon-to-be coaches, per se, for basketball. And they're like, oh, you're teaching. What subject? Math. That, just over and over again. Or the fact that always questioning your credentials based on said race. It's been bothering me, actively.
No?
First, I only think I had one black teacher in my entire school career, if I'm remembering that correct, maybe 1 or 2. But the first thing that was said to me when I walked this campus in an open house was, we need you to be a teacher, because there's not a representation of a black female teacher. That's all I have to say. Yeah. Just hearing that say, we need you from a white woman, it's different. It's different. It was really eye-opening too.
All right, next.
That's something that's sad.
Oh, it's true. I'm really glad that somebody said that. And I was actually really glad to, in that 7 trends, to see that the teaching force is becoming more diverse. That was incredibly encouraging to me. We must be doing something right in this higher ed world if that is happening to our teaching force.
The worst.
But
Nothing. Sorry. So this article references kind of militant teachers, those with like strict rules who write up their students for any little mistake. So what do you think would be the difference in students that come from, say, one of those strict classrooms versus those that come from a nurturing classroom? Hannah?
I do have a personal experience with this because my freshman year we had two English teachers, and I got put with the really, really strict one who was very harsh with grading. And, you know, we worked on grammar, we worked on this. And the other teacher, she was like, well, we've been talking about someone who wasn't trained in education. She actually had just come from teaching elementary school without, you know, her credentials. So she had her teaching license. But they worked on like shoebox projects, and this is in high school. And so the next year when we're going into like our honors, you know, literature classes, they didn't know grammatical structures, and they didn't know, you know, how to analyze a source, or, you know, how to read and synthesize what the author had said. So I think in some ways, like we've been talking about, you do need structure. But at the same time, we were terrified of her, and then no one liked to speak up in her class, and it felt like a militant society.
Shan?
I have a personal story about this too. In my blog placement this past semester, my CE was someone who was very fun. She was like almost 60 years old, but she was very fun, very like lively in the classroom. She wanted students to like work together and talk, and, you know, it was just a very like fun and open classroom. And every day at lunch we would go and sit with the other teachers, and there was always this one teacher who was like constantly complaining like about the students and the job and stuff. And I just didn't really think much of it. And then like one of my last days there, my teacher asked me to go to her class to show her something on like the computer. And so I walk in, and I'm not joking, the students who like I have never like seen be quiet in their life, it's literally like this. Like every student was just like straight face, sitting straight, staring at the board, and she's like sitting at her desk, talking to them, and they're all just like, and I walk in and like they're just looking at me, no one says a peep, and I was like, I was just sitting here to like it was such an uncomfortable environment. And I feel like if you are being so strict in the classroom to the students, you're also being so strict to yourself, where you're not having fun and you're not even enjoying the job at some point, you know? Like if you are so terrified of, like, one of the biggest things I learned this semester is that learning can happen in chaos, and it's okay sometimes, and it can be a structured chaos. But just like seeing her classroom and then like matching that with all the things that she had said all semester, I get it. Like if you are creating the culture not only for the students but for yourself, and if that's the culture you're creating, you're also going to be unhappy. So of what Hannah was saying, like if you create an environment that's so rigid and strict, you're also going to see like an increase in student anxiety, and I think that's where some of that test taking anxiety can come from, or presentation, not wanting to speak in front of your peers or in front of class or present projects or whatever. And so like I think I agree with Shannon about having like the like controlled chaos, like having an environment where it's okay to like make mistakes. I don't think I really started realizing that it was okay to mess up until I got to college and like got like a job where I mess up sometimes and had to learn that it's okay.
I often see that really structured, like, hyper rule-based classroom teaching rooms, because it can be incredibly intimidating to walk into a classroom full of 30 students when you're not much older than them, and you know you don't have a lot more experience, and you know that is why like practice things at this point. And also it's okay. One of the best things I learned in my teaching program was set the expectations, set the rule, but then you have the power to break it and to say it doesn't apply. And it's better to have that expectation articulated and then to not enforce it than to not have that expectation articulated and then have to try and put it in place after the fact. So I think that's one of those things you'll learn over time, when and how to orchestrate the chaos. But I would encourage you to start with more know in your back of your mind that you can always apply that differently. Like you might notice in my syllabus, for example, I say that after so many absences, you're docked 5% per absence. But I don't say if it's 5% on your entire grade or 5% per, like where the 5% applies. I put that vague language intentionally so that I can apply it in situations where the student needs a harsher lesson, or I can apply it differently in situations where students need maybe a lesser discipline. So build those kind of things into your structure, but also know that you might, for example, excuse some absences or only take off 2% for a student who's got maybe some real reasons why they're not doing those things. Does that make sense?
Let me add something. I can't help myself. I've been in education for a very long time. So I'm listening to this conversation, and I think the question about strict versus lenient is kind of the wrong question. Because you could have, let's just take an example. What's something that's really challenging for children? Algebra. Let's just say algebra, an algebra class. I'm thinking of the class that you described too, with your learning grammar and structure and so forth. So algebra is challenging, and it's going to be more challenging for some students than others. And so I could be terrified that my kids are going to act out and they're not going to learn it because algebra is challenging. And so I could set all kinds of rules and consequences and have a very structured classroom. Door B, open door B, I could set the expectation that I know you can learn algebra. It's challenging, it's gonna be hard. I know how hard it is, and it's really good. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be harder for some of you than others, but I'm here to help you and we're gonna learn it, but it's gonna take structure, it's gonna take hard work, and we're gonna just buckle down and do the work and do it. Strict, rule-based, which one's gonna produce more learning? And so strictness or lenience is the wrong question. The right question is, what expectations do you have for the students? I think a lot of times in a rule-based, strict, sort of you use the word militant, focused class, is the teacher doesn't have any belief in the students and doesn't believe they can learn it, and so the structure is sort of a smokescreen.
It's punitive as opposed to generative.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Well, to go with what you're saying, in our class with Dr. Rogers, our culturally relevant classroom management, we talk about like contracting at the beginning of the year, like in that first week.
Yeah.
Like, here's what I expect of you, what do you expect from me, like let's work something out together. Except for the things that you kind of have to set into place, but I think that idea can help make that structure, but also give students like a place.
And then what that teacher does to make it relevant to the students, to make them motivated and interested and want to learn it, that makes all the difference too. Anyway, I'll stop, but I couldn't help it.
That's okay.
I think I'm probably almost out of time, so I'll ask just one more last question. Based on your experiences, either in school or going through the program and everything that we've kind of researched in this class, what do you think are some of the main reasons that teachers today are so highly criticized? So much more than other professions.
Because the people who are criticizing us aren't in the classroom to see it in action. Nor do they have the actual base to critique it or judge it per se, compared to the data that we've seen. They don't know it. Or they have the time to do it as well. Not putting a deal on parents, but parents are busy.
I think one of the other things we talked about is this rhetoric of fear, and we've got policymakers who are saying, this is what they're teaching in the schools, and like inciting fear among parents. So they've got this idea that they're a bad parent if they are sending these kids to public schools the way that they are now, and we've seen this in other generations too. So I think that's one of the main issues, and we always talked about how teaching is under a microscope, because people say that these are how you're fostering the next generation, like who's going to take over America.
Future citizens, social studies.
So I think that's why we're under a microscope right now.
You guys also need to know what roles that we have to play and the amount of feathers we have in our caps. So like if we have to be the teacher, we have to be the educator, but we're also required to be the parent or the second parent. We also have to be the social worker. We have to be the friend. Even though we can't be, we be friendly, but we're not supposed to be friends with them. So like the amount of roles that we actually have to do and that society now expects of us crumbling under the weight of it. But they're not trying to take weight off of us.
What about one of the themes of this class is that there are competing, conflicting visions of what the purpose of education is, what the purpose of social studies is. That adds any type of challenge to how the profession is viewed.
Yeah, because the federal government has their view, the state has their view, the county has their view, the parent has their view, and ultimately the student has their view, and who does the teacher have to prioritize? And that's the question that we have to answer. And I think we shouldn't say we're not going to prioritize the student or whatever that says.
You asked why the teachers or what?
Like, why is teaching such a criticized profession?
Well, just because it's never done the way that everybody wants it to be done. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like you're watched from so many different, like I don't know what Matthew was saying, you just wear so many different hats and you have so many eyes on you all the time, and like what you think is right isn't necessarily what your principal is gonna think is right, which is why hopefully when you get your job you align with the school that you're, gonna apply for, but still like it's just there's no right answer all the time.
Because you can never please.
Different purpose and different program. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because you can never please everybody. There's always gonna be people that want different things.
Somebody that
Mm-hmm.
somebody.
That's why it's so important that you guys articulate and know what it is you view it as. That's why we're writing these letters to the Secretary of Education. I know we've laughed and joked a lot about like, are we gonna have one by the time these letters are written? But regardless of what happens with our federal government, being able to articulate why it is you think your vision for teaching is right is a fundamental part of how you're going to mitigate all of those different rubrics.
All right. Thank you.